As you heard, today I'll be signing into law legislation that will in the end give effect to two undertakings that were made by this sixth administration, which is soon coming to an end in a few days, when it took office. The first undertaking was to capacitate and strengthen our law enforcement agencies, and particularly the National Prosecuting Authority, fight against corruption. The second undertaking that we made was to work with civil society, who are represented here today, with communities and other sectors to end gender-based violence and femicide. You will know that last week here at this very spot, we signed the National Health Insurance Bill into law. Soon after signing it, there was a flurry of opposition to the enactment of that law. And I'm hoping that today, much as you are not smiling, I'm not seeing any smiles, you are all so serious as the police and soldiers that I often see around, surrounding me. You are too serious for my liking. Now you are being proper South Africans. Now I'm hoping that once I've signed these two pieces of legislation, there won't be the same flurry of opposition that we experienced when the National Health Insurance Act was enacted. We have previously held public signing ceremonies for important legislation, for instance, like the national minimum wage and the constitutional amendment to make South African Sign Language our 12th official language. The public signing of transformative legislation promotes transparency and accountability. It helps to ensure that the citizens of our country do become aware of the laws that affect them, that they understand what these laws are all about and what they entail, and also to understand that through the enactment of these laws, they, the citizens of our country, will be better empowered to exercise their rights under these laws. Now, there are many other laws that I sign. Like I will be signing a few more laws before the full end of this, or the last day of the term of this administration. But some of those, yes, do impact on the lives of our people. But those that we've decided to sign more publicly are those that directly impact on various processes, such as the two that I have enumerated. Corruption and gender-based violence are two scourges that plague our country and corrode our social fabric. As we mark 30 years of democracy, we know that our aspiration to be a fully equal society cannot be achieved as long as criminals and corrupt people steal the resources meant for the benefit of the poor, and for as long as this country's women and girls do not feel safe and feel free to walk the streets of our country. The two pieces of legislation that I will sign today do form part of the government's efforts to strengthen institutions, to develop partnerships, and to build state security, but more importantly, to improve the lives of our people. The first piece of legislation facilitates the establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Now, this statutory body which was envisaged in the National Strategic Plan that was crafted by the women of our country. Soon after I became president, many women in our country marched to the union buildings and said they will not leave until I have come to listen to their cries and their concerns. And indeed, they were here gathered outside for the rest of the day. And one kept thinking that, well, they will deliver the memorandum to the Director General, but they made it clear that we are not going to leave. We are going to sleep here. And when I thought of the specter of women of our country sleeping here at the union buildings, I had to wake up at about, no, I didn't wake up, I don't sleep early. I think it was 9 o'clock at night. I came to the union buildings after talking to a number of ministers, including Minister Clearly. And I came. I didn't come in my pajamas. I came fully dressed in a tracksuit or something. And they outlined the concerns and the heavy burden that they were bearing as the women of our country. That led to thorough engagement. The only reason they left the union buildings that night was a firm undertaking from me and the government that we are going to pay much more serious attention to the concerns that they were raising. That's how we finally got them to agree to walk back to their vehicles. And following that, we seriously embraced the whole process of addressing gender-based violence. Not that we hadn't done before, but it was with much more determination, working together with the women of our country in their various organizations. And for me, the greatest joy was being able to hear them one after another. And I recall very clearly when one of the women, when we held the first summit, they made me sit right in the front, as I always do. And she went to the stage, and in describing the hurt and the injuries that she had sustained, she even undressed in public. And it was not so much to make a spectacle. It was much more to demonstrate what gender-based violence does to the women of our country. And I can tell you that the message sunk in. It was after that summit when they had taken decisions, clear decisions to put together a national strategic plan, that we embarked on a much more enriching journey, which has led to the amendment of a number of other laws that deal with bail refusal for those who are accused and who are charged for either rape or murder of women, and many other processes and legislative strictures that should follow that. Now today, the statutory body that will be part of this act will coordinate and provide strategic leadership to fight against gender-based violence and femicide. It will be multi-sectoral, drawing on the experience and expertise of a number of stakeholders, including civil society, labor, and business. Now, establishing this council was one of the resolutions, as I said, of the first presidential summit on gender-based violence and femicide, which I convened in 2018. Since then, working together, we've made important progress. The National Strategic Plan was developed together, as I said, with civil society, and was a response to this national emergency, which I dubbed the second pandemic, following on COVID-19. We have funded the Women's the Women's Economic Assembly, collaborating with civil society and business. This initiative aims to integrate women-owned enterprises into industry value chains, promote sustainable economic development, and empower the women of our country economically. And this we did too in response to some of the issues that were raised by the women of our country as they spoke out about the abuse of women, not only physically, but economically as well, and called out that we needed to be much more serious on economically empowering the women of our country. Around 21 billion rand was dedicated over the medium term to the implementation of the 6 pillars of the National Strategic Plan, including the economic empowerment of women. We enacted new laws, as I said, to strengthen the response of the criminal justice system to gender-based violence. We have worked to improve the support provided to survivors of gender-based violence through the establishment of the new Tutuzela care centers. And it's always a joy whenever I meet with the director of the NPA, when she comes to tell me about the work that is being done also by the NPA, working together with others, about Tutuzela centers. We have now new sexual offenses courts, and the Minister of Justice always briefs me on the setting up of these courts and how dedicated his own department has been in ensuring that these courts are set up and built, as well as victim-friendly rooms. And I've been to some of those victim-friendly rooms in some of the courts, and particularly in one court where he took me. Also, the Minister of Police, as he has taken me to various police stations around the country where they have these victim-friendly rooms with dedicated police officials that now work on a full-time basis on gender-based violence cases. Now, through these efforts, we have seen improvements in the conviction rates and in stricter sentencing. We are not yet where we ought to be. Now, while this progress is welcome, our greatest task is to prevent gender-based violence, as Minister Dlamini Zuma said. We need to prevent gender-based violence from being perpetrated in the first place. And of course, bearing in mind that most of these dastardly criminal acts happen in the privacy of the homes or places where two people often are. But some are so ghastly and offensive that they happen in a much more public place, like the women who were raped on a mine, in a mine area where illegal mining was taking place on the West Rand. We want to end once and for all the violence that men perpetrate against girls and women. That is why everyone in society needs to be involved. Even as we have made progress in implementing the National Strategic Plan, we've also recognized the need for the national response to be more coordinated between the different stakeholders. We need a national effort that is much more inclusive, more focused, and more importantly, a response that is better resourced. We are confident that this council that is now being legislated to come into existence will provide much of what we need and will further strengthen the national effort to eradicate violence against women and children. Now, I wish to congratulate Parliament, and I wish to congratulate the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, and indeed other government stakeholders, to also congratulate development partners and the UN agencies for their efforts to bring us to this point. The Department of Social Welfare also continued to play a very important role, and indeed the Department of Justice did also. I wish also to thank civil society organizations whose tireless advocacy for this council to come into being has really borne the fruit that we are now signing into law today. And thank you very much for the work that has been done in this regard. Now, I do believe now that we will continue to count on your support, as well as the support of labor and business in this all-of-society effort to combat the pandemic of gender-based violence. Now, young boys at a school, and I forget the name of the school for this moment, came up with this initiative of signing, what did we call it? A pledge. St. Benedict School. Young boys came up with this initiative to sign, to get men to sign a pledge. And the pledge was quite informative and very inspiring, where they said they'd like the men of South Africa to sign a pledge, amongst other things, that they will never raise their hands against women, they will respect women, they will recognize the role that women play in our society, and that they will not rape the women of our country. During my election campaign, I have been speaking about this, and I've been saying that the men of our country should zip up, and they should stop killing the women of our country. And I do believe that the initiative that has been started by these young boys should be taken to a much higher level. As Cabinet, we did decide that we would like to sign to this pledge, and we look for an occasion where we would do so more publicly. And I do believe that in the 7th administration, I would like to see that happening, where the men of our country will be brought together to sign the pledge, similar to the one that these young boys initiated. But it was also inspiring to hear women also saying they would also want to participate in signing a pledge, and a pledge that they would also sign alongside men. So I do believe that we are going to start getting on with doing a number of things. Start various initiatives, Minister Dlamini Zuma, that will lead to the curbing of incidents of gender-based violence and raising the level of consciousness so that we can prevent occurrences of gender-based violence. Ladies and gentlemen, the signing into law of the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill will establish an investigating directorate against corruption as a permanent entity within the NPA. It has been 5 years since we established an investigating directorate within the NPA to investigate cases of corruption and other serious crimes arising from the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. These are 5 years in which great progress has been made. To date, the investigating directorate has taken 39 state capture and corruption cases to court, involving 212 accused persons and 68 accused entities. In the last 5 years, the NPA has also secured the conviction of almost 700 government officials for corruption. The NPA's asset forfeiture unit has restrained and preserved state capture assets to the value of more than 14 billion rand. Now that is a great achievement. Over 6 billion rand has been recovered so far. 6 billion rand that was stolen, 6 billion rand that had flowed into the hands of those who were part of state capture has been brought back, and the 14 billion has been preserved. Now the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption will be a permanent prosecution-led agency with full criminal investigation powers. And this is important. This legislation will help to overcome challenges with capacity and expertise within the NPA to investigate and prosecute complex corruption cases. The Investigating Directorate Against Corruption will be able to recruit and also to retain specialist skills to deliver on its mandate. Permanent criminal investigators will be appointed, and they will have full police powers. The Directorate will be able to reap the benefits of collaboration with the private sector and other social partners. By way of example, efforts are underway as part of this partnership between government and business to create a digital evidence unit specializing in the identification, the collection, analysis, and prevention of digital evidence. Prosecution is the state's most serious and credible instrument of accountability. When prosecutors obtain convictions before independent courts for serious crimes like corruption, they not only hold those persons accountable, they also strengthen the rule of law, which we are all, as South Africans, supposed to have subscribed to by recognizing the importance and the role that our Constitution plays in the body politic of our country. Today, we are taking another step in our quest to promote accountability and consequence management as well. The criminal actions of those involved in corruption and the perpetrators of gender-based violence may differ in nature, but the consequences of both are devastating. Corruption and gender-based violence are affronts to the human dignity that is the inalienable right of every South African. Now, these forms of criminality are holding our country back and preventing us from realizing our full potential. As one goes through the length and the breadth of the country talking to our people, some of the two important issues that they raise is corruption as well as the scourge of gender-based violence against the women and girls of our country. Now, the signing of these two acts signal our determination to continue to build an ethical, capable state with strong institutions that can deliver on their mandate of improving the lives of every South African. Now, I want to call on all stakeholders in government, in business, in labor, and across civil society to make these two new entities a success. So what we are unleashing today are the two key entities that are aimed at giving the people of our country confidence that we are serious about fighting corruption and that we are serious about addressing gender-based violence and ending it. And on the issue of the independent directorate, I do want to thank the parliamentary colleagues. I also want to thank the various departments. But I also especially want to thank Minister Lamula, who was straightforward enough and came to me and said, President, we've got to make the independent directorate, truly investigating directorate, truly independent, and we've got to set it up. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this journey, and much as you are not smiling much this morning, I am smiling in my heart, and I want to tell you, I want to tell you that each time I've stood in public meetings and have listened to the cries of the women of our country, I knew that we needed to respond, and we needed to respond in a convincing manner. And each time I stood in Parliament, as various members of Parliament kept on harping on the issue of corruption and saying, you are not doing anything about corruption. And where I would retort and say, what would you like me to do? To be judge, to be prosecutor, to be the policeman, and to be all these three things combined. And I have remained committed in saying, my job is to enable the various entities of government to do their work, and to do the work effectively and to achieve their mandate or execute their mandate. And I've said, we want the police to do their work as effectively as possible. We want the NPA to do exactly the same. And in this case, we want the ID also to do its work, and the Council on Gender-Based Violence that we are establishing today to do all it can to help us address gender-based violence. So this morning, I am a happy president. I'm a very happy president. And as I sit down, lift that pen, and this is one pen I will not say I've been looking for. I knew it was coming. So this morning, I have my pen and I'm going to sign these into law. Thank you very much. President's Act number 145 of 2024. I hereby, in terms of section 84(2)(a), read with section 79(1)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996, I sent to the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act number 9 of 2024, and sign the English text thereof, given here under my hand at the Union Buildings on this day of 2024, the 24th on this day of May 2024. And they say, sign, President, which I now do.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, as the President is thanking the team, we will now proceed to the signing of the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill. At this time, I'd like to invite Minister Lamola. I'll also invite the leadership of the NPA and the Deputy Minister, John Jeffries. I'd like to invite other senior officials of various law enforcement agencies that are present. Minister Tele, Commissioner Masamula,
I now have the opportunity to sign the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Act through the President's Act number 108 of 2024. I hereby, in terms of Section 84(2)(a), read with Section 79(1) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, assent to the National Prosecuting Authority Act 2024, Act number 10 of 2024, and sign the English text thereof. Given under my hand at the Union Buildings on this, the 24th of May, the year 2024. They now say, as President, I should sign, which I hereby do, willingly and happy. It is now the law of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.